Hi, my name is Elsie Bustamante, and the poem I chose is called Life is Fine by Langston Hughes. I went down to the river, I sat down on the bank. I tried to think but couldn't, so I jumped in and sang. I came up once and hollered, I came up twice and cried. If that water hadn't been so cold, I might have sunk and died. But it was cold in that water, it was cold. I took the elevator, 16 floors above the ground. I thought about my baby and thought I would jump down. I stood there and I hollered, I stood there and I cried. If it hadn't been so high, I might have jumped and died. But it was high up there, it was high. So since I'm still here living, I guess I will live on. I could have died for love, but for living, I was born. Though you may hear me holler, and you may see me cry, I'll be dogged, sweet baby, if you're gonna see me die. Life is fine. Fine as wine, life is fine. When I first read this poem, I immediately loved it. Not only because I found it interesting or because I like this poet's work, but because the way in which the poem was structured to effectively convey its theme and meaning really pulled me in. When I read the title, I thought the poem was going to be about life and how everything is always fine. But imagine my surprise when I found out the poem was about suicide and about the difficulties the speaker was going through. After reading the poem a couple of times, I decided that the theme was: even though life may seem very difficult, it is very important to persevere and never give up. I think this is a very strong message because I am sure many people around the world lead a very difficult life and they have considered suicide as a way to end all their pain and sufferings. So this is an issue that should be addressed. The way the author structures the poem in order to transmit the desired meaning is very peculiar but highly effective. A pattern I noticed throughout the poem is that the first two stanzas of the poem are structured in the same way. The first line tells us the setting. On the second line, it tells us where the character is heading towards. On the third line, it talks about her thoughts. On the fourth line, it talks about the actions that happened or would happen. On the fifth and sixth line, it shows the emotions she's feeling. And on the seventh and eighth line, it says why she didn't go through with it. After the first and second stanza, there is a short line that emphasizes why she didn't commit suicide. The first one goes, "But it was cold in that water, it was cold." I think this means that the cold water kept her body and mind awake and alert to what was happening, so she couldn't do it. The second short line, located at the bottom of the second stanza, goes, "But it was high up there, it was high." I think this means that the realization of how high the building was also prevented her from committing suicide. I think the specific poem structure and word choice not only gives the reader a clearer image of the events happening, but it also strengthens the connection between the reader and the theme that is trying to be conveyed. For example, the poem ends in a way in which contradicts everything that has been said before. Life is fine. Fine as wine, life is fine. This word choice makes me reevaluate the whole poem and understand better who the speaker is. I imagine a woman speaking, with a colloquial tone, a woman who has lost someone precious, someone she calls her sweet baby. This terrible loss associated with love leads her to believing that suicide is the only way out of the pain she's feeling. But at the end she realizes that suicide is not the way to end all the suffering and pain. And she will not let her sweet baby see her die. So she just accepts life as it is and she says that life is fine, fine as wine, life is fine. Last but not least, tone is a very important aspect of this poem as well, because it works along with the theme that is in the poem. The tone of this poem shifts at the end of stanza 2. The poem begins with a melancholic tone, but then shifts to being more optimistic. This is because the speaker realizes that suicide is not the solution, and she also becomes more optimistic about life being fine, even though she's going through difficult times. I went down to the river. I sat down on the bank. I tried to think but couldn't, so I jumped in and sank. I came up once and hollered. I came up twice and cried. If that water hadn't been so cold, I might have sunk and died. But it was cold in that water. It was cold. I took the elevator, 16 floors above the ground. I thought about my baby and thought I would jump down. I stood there and I hollered. I stood there and I cried. If it hadn't been so high, I might have jumped and died. But it was high up there. It was high. So since I'm still here living, I guess I will live on. I could have died for love, but for living I was born. Though you may hear me holler and you may see me cry, I'll be dogged, sweet baby, if you're gonna see me die. Life is fine. Fine as wine, life is fine.